I don't really like how my hair turned out, so don't look at my hair. For the entire duration of this video, do not look at my hair, okay? Hello and welcome back to the Bliss Bean. I've kind of been feeling off for the past few days and I don't really know why, but basically I did not have it in me to put together a big video full of b-roll and pretty transitions and titles and everything, so this video is just going to be me talking and I hope that's fine. I asked you guys to send questions about my school experience or advice that you might want from me for some reason, and you actually sent in so many questions and I'm really excited because I love giving out advice. I'm just gonna go through them one by one. So the first one is just ACT, question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark, the good old ACT. So for the ACT, I studied the same way that I studied for all of my AP exams, which was just buying a Princeton Review prep book. I actually haven't tried any other like brands for test prep materials, but the Princeton Review has never failed me. I've always stuck with them, but I would recommend trying a couple of different brands to see what works best for you. I studied, I believe, the summer before my junior year. I never took any prep classes or anything. I just went based off of the book and took some of the practice exams that were in the book itself. So I studied that summer and then I took it October of my junior year. So it was nice to study during the summer because I had a lot of free time, and it was also nice to take it in October rather than when like the school assigned date was in the spring, because things hadn't really gotten crazy with the school year yet, and so I felt like I could focus better on it. I think the most important thing when studying for the ACT is getting the strategies down pat. I think it's basically a game. In terms of content, it's not really that difficult. It's just the challenge of time and the challenge of understanding what they're asking you. And so I thought the Princeton Review book did a really good job of teaching you exactly what you need to do, like as soon as you get your test book, and how to best make use of your time. So I remember doing so many like practice reading passages that by the time I got my actual test booklet, I was like, I gotta skim through the questions, circle my keywords, star the ones that have specific line references, skim through the passage, underline key information in the passage, and it worked. I didn't really feel that rushed for time. So yeah, as you're studying your content, don't forget about the strategies. How did you balance all of your extracurriculars and all your schoolwork? Planning, I guess. Yeah, that's really the only answer I have. I think without planning, it's easy to like let one area of your life kind of creep into all of the others and take away time from the others. And so if I would plan my week at the start of the week, I could write down everything I needed to do for school and everything I needed to do for extracurriculars. And if I just scheduled that, like knowing how much time I had and how much time everything took me, I was able to get everything done. Yeah, I don't really have an answer outside of that. I guess maybe just like choosing extracurriculars that you're genuinely excited about, so it doesn't feel like you're having to force yourself to do your homework and to do your extracurriculars. Whenever you're excited about something, it's much easier to do it. But also trying to get as much homework done as possible during the school day. My biggest pet peeve was the people who would complain so much about getting so much homework, and then every time I would look over at them when we had time to do our homework in class, they'd just be on their phone or talking to their friends. And so I was like, maybe it's not the homework load that's the problem, maybe you don't have the time management skills to properly deal with it. But anyways, it's none of my business. So yeah, try to get as much done in school, pick extracurriculars that are enjoyable for you, and plan your week to get everything done. Okay, how to get out of ruts. I feel like I'm in one right now, and honestly, I was just thinking about how I feel like ruts like this would not really happen to me as much during the school year, and I think it was just because I was much busier, and also busier in a way where if I didn't meet deadlines or do things would go wrong, whereas like with YouTube, if I don't upload a video, or if I don't upload a video to the full quality that I know I am capable of, nothing's gonna happen. Like literally no one's gonna be mad, no one's gonna be disappointed, grades aren't gonna suffer, the world is not going to end at all. So in all honesty, I think one way to maybe not get out of a rut, but to avoid getting in one, is to keep yourself busy. I don't think this works for everyone, and so you have to know yourself, because maybe keeping busy is harmful for you, not helpful. But if you are in a rut, I really love the idea of a fresh start. So like with the week I've been having, I've really been looking forward to Sunday, because I know that I can plan out a new week and figure out a way to get stuff done that I was supposed to this week but just like couldn't bring myself to do. So if you do weekly planning, that's a good time to kind of hit the reset button. But if you don't have that sort of routine in place, then maybe just kind of like creating your own reset, like writing out a to-do list of what you need to do, maybe some fun things you could do that you know will make you feel like yourself again, and just being like, okay, this is a new day, a fresh start, and I'm going to make this day the best day ever, no matter how the past few days have gone. I would also definitely recommend trying to figure out a morning and evening routine that work for you, because I find that whenever I get into ruts, I start skipping my routines, which I always regret. Okay, how do you take notes and stay organized? I feel like I talked about my note-taking system in some video. I'll try to find it and link it. It's definitely not very fancy. I could never start a study blur or a studygram because it's not aesthetic at all. Also, my handwriting sucks, especially if I know that no one else will be reading it. So I personally don't think that like making your notes pretty is necessary unless it makes studying more enjoyable for you, which then by all means go ahead and do that. But my notes were pretty plain. I just tried to stick to the same format for every class so that I kind of had a clear system for labeling vocab and labeling headers, and my bullet points were the same across all of my classes. In terms of staying organized, like in my study tips video, I talked about I think it's important to come up with an organization system at the start of the year and just sticking with that and not changing it 5 times throughout the school year. Try to have your subjects separated, so have a separate place for notes for each class and a separate folder for handouts from each class, and also clean out your stuff. So something that I did was eventually I would not be able to fit my notes in the binder that I assigned for that class, so I would take out my old notes that I really didn't need to refer to that often and I would put them somewhere in my room. I think one year I just had like this narrow box that I would slide papers into. Since school is so digital these days, I think it's also important to make sure that your digital side of stuff is organized. So I think most people use Google Drive, so making sure that all of that is nice and organized by classes. I also have a video on how I organize my digital files if you're interested. The next question just says, advice. So you're watching the right video if you want advice. What are the regrets you had in your high school life and how did you overcome them? My phone is my microphone, so like I can't hold it in my hand, so I kind of have to look at it like this. I talked about this in like my post-graduation plans video, but I honestly didn't have any regrets. No regrets, YOLO. There were definitely better decisions that I could have made, but I think I learned from those. And I guess there were things I could have started earlier, like there was this club that I joined in 10th grade that I really liked. Could have joined it freshman year, but like honestly in the long run of life it doesn't matter, and I think things come into your life at the time that they're supposed to. So yeah, I'm sorry if that was a disappointing answer, but no regrets for high school. Do you have any more tips on learning Korean separate from your video? I think an update on that video is long overdue, so I won't talk too much about this, but one thing that has worked for me recently is I used to study for about 25 minutes a day because that worked pretty nicely with my school schedule, I think. But then when summer started, I found that it was hard and kind of inconvenient to find that 25-minute chunk of time every single day. So instead what I've been doing is practicing for an hour 3 times a week, which comes out to the same amount of time that I studied previously, just more bunched up. So consistency is important with language learning, but don't think that you have to do it every single day. If that doesn't work with your schedule, try studying a few times a week instead. Another thing I recently discovered was this flashcard software called Anki, I think it's called. Kind of confusing to figure out at first, but it's much more powerful than Quizlet, and I think worth it in the long run to learn how to use it. So I've been using that for vocab because I got really sick of making tiny little flashcards, and my flashcards also went from English to Korean, and I didn't like the fact that I was like tying all of my Korean vocab to the English translations because I want to learn Korean. I don't want to learn how to translate English to Korean, if that makes sense. So instead what I've been doing with Anki is I will upload an image file that represents that vocab word, maybe add a little hint if it's something like very abstract and it's hard to find a picture of it, and I add an audio file which I purchased and downloaded from How to Study Korean. So I don't have the English translation at all, and I wish I had started like that. So if you are just starting to learn a language, I would highly recommend not relying on translations to your native language. How did you make the decision not to go to school? How should someone know if school is the right thing for them after graduating high school or not? It's hard for me to give advice on this because my gap year has literally started and I am figuring things out as I go. But I think for me, the fact that I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do was a signal that I wasn't ready to go to school. I also just didn't want to jump into 4 more years of school after doing 13 years of school, and I really liked the idea of kind of taking a year off from academics, and this is gonna sound super cheesy, but like figuring out who I am outside of the context of school. I wanted some time to experiment more with photography and see how that would go for me, if it's something I would ever consider doing full-time in the future. I was very unsure and still very unsure, mainly of the question of where I want to go to school, especially as it relates to the question of money. So yeah, I felt like there were a lot of benefits to just stepping away for a year, and I didn't really see what I could lose from this. It's literally just a year. Did you ever get senioritis, and if so, how did you deal with it? I need help with mine. You know, kind of. Not really that bad, actually. I think only because my senior year was very easy. I was taking 4 classes and I had 3 open hours in my schedule. I hope that doesn't make me sound lazy, because I promise you I was using those 3 hours to their maximum capacity. So I had 4 classes, and about half of that was like photo and video classes, and I would say I really only had 1 class that genuinely academically challenged me. So by the time that senior year rolled around, my life was already really starting to transition over to other things like YouTube and photography, and so I didn't really get as sick of school because I wasn't spending that much time on school. I would say one frustrating thing was the fact that classes just felt so pointless towards the end of it. We were hardly doing anything and it felt like busy work, and as someone who is very uptight about managing their time, it was frustrating for me to have to sit in classes where we weren't really doing anything. And I also found myself getting quite fed up with the clubs that I was in. Like, I was really happy with the choices that I made of what extracurriculars I got involved in, but I was involved in most of them for the full 4 years of high school, and so by the end of that, it just got a little bit old. Tips for dealing with it: maybe thinking about what you like about school. So towards the end of the year, I got sad about the fact that I wasn't going to be seeing my friends every single day, and so I really tried to enjoy that as much as possible, and I think that helped me just enjoy school more. Also trying to find stuff outside of school that you enjoy, so for me that was obviously blogging and photography. And yeah, I guess just trusting that no matter how frustrated you are with senior year, it will be over soon. How long have you been self-studying Korean, and can you read Hangul without any pauses now? Okay, so sometimes I feel like I learn embarrassingly slow. I've been studying for maybe a year and 3 months now, but then I think about how much progress I've made, like the fact that I will see tweets from BTS and actually understand the general gist of them, even if I can't directly translate them, and just the fact that I can actually make sense of Hangul now, whereas before it was just circles and sticks, as someone in the YouTube comment section called it. Can I read it without pauses? I guess, but can I read it quickly? Not really. If I'm going through a lesson on howtostudykorean.com, all of the example sentences will be vocab and grammar that I'm familiar with, so those I can read pretty quickly. But if it's something totally new to me and I'm just kind of reading it for fun to see, how much could I understand from this with the knowledge that I have, then I think it goes pretty slowly. But it's definitely not trying to decipher letter by letter. And if I had one tip for studying Korean, I would say definitely get a solid foundation in Hangul before you move on to learning anything. Do not start with romanizations. I hate romanizations, and I honestly don't use them unless I'm learning fan chants. It might be hard at first, but it's just one of those things that you have to do and you have to get it over with. It'll help you a lot with understanding pronunciation, and it's just something you won't have to do later on. Okay, a lot of these questions are just asking for general study tips, so I do have a study tips video, and I think in a lot of the more specific questions that I'm answering, I'm just giving out a lot of study tips. Okay, this person is asking for advice on dealing with drama, if you have ever had to deal with it. Honestly, I don't think I've ever had to deal with it. I don't know if I'm just good at avoiding stuff, or if the type of people that I hang out with don't really get into drama, but so I guess I can't really give advice on how to deal with drama, but I can give advice on how to avoid it. So I'm pretty proud of my ability to just not care about things, I guess, or not let things get me worked up. There was a really good section on that in the book You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, where she talked about how you have to care more about your own well-being than you care about being right. If you struggle and you fight and you argue to be right, you're sacrificing your own inner peace and emotional well-being, and even if you win the argument, you're probably gonna feel crappier than you did if you just let things slide. Obviously there are some things that are worth fighting for, but I think in most situations, especially in high school, if you just don't worry, don't pay attention to things that are going on, you'll be fine. And that's the tea. Life after school. Did you know what you wanted to do? I've definitely really narrowed in on what major I want to do. It goes by many different names, and I think the closest thing I've been able to find to it is at NYU, and it's called Media, Culture, and Communications. I was just watching a YouTube video from someone who's doing that major, and they talked about the classes that they're taking, and they all seemed so interesting. But also at some schools, the journalism majors have specific tracks you can take that kind of bring more of a marketing and media side into it rather than just traditional reporting. So that's what I would like to study if I end up studying anything at all. I think the career question is harder because, especially with a major like this, there's just a lot you can apply it to. It doesn't translate directly into one career. I guess my strategy right now is kind of exploring the things that I'm interested in and seeing where they take me, because I don't think that sitting around and doing thought experiments about my future is going to get me anywhere, and the only way to figure out what I want to do is by doing things and seeing which ones I enjoy most and which ones actually can translate into some sort of career. Why did you choose the gap year route and pros and cons of that choice? So I think I already talked about why, and I also covered the pros of this decision. And as I said, I'm not far into this gap year, so there's not much for me to go off of, but definitely a con I've already experienced is just this feeling of missing out, like as you're seeing everyone go to college and just wanting that experience for yourself. Like logically, I know that it's just a year and I can still have that college experience, but FOMO is rarely a logical feeling. Also feeling lonely because one, my friends have gone off to college and some of them are halfway across the country, but also just being around people every day. I'm the type of person who really likes to work independently, so I've loved being able to do that without distractions, but I also just like being around people, and that was something I got to do every day when I went to classes. So that's been an adjustment, but I don't think it at all outweighs the pros of taking a gap year, and I also just need to push myself to like go to events and meet new people. What are some things / skills you learned that will definitely help you in the future? Definitely not calculus, not biology. I think most of the practical learning that I did occurred in my extracurriculars. So like I did this volunteering club where I had a bunch of different leadership positions, and I learned so much about like professional communication and leadership and project management and just staying organized in general. In classes, I think AP Language and Composition was a very good class, mainly because I had a fantastic teacher who really pushed us in our writing. Photo and video classes, I don't think I learned very much technically, but I had the chance to kind of teach myself things and apply them to different kinds of projects that I otherwise would not have tried. Psychology was also a very interesting class, and I think it helps you understand how people work, not just the people around you, but even how you yourself work, which I think is very important for life. And then there were some classes that maybe weren't super practical, but I think the knowledge I gained in them helped me to just become a more well-rounded person. And so the first one that comes to mind is definitely AP World History, because I realized how little I knew about world history and how kind of distorted my worldview was because of that. I don't think I learned much of anything useful in the math and science departments, but that's really only because I'm not planning on majoring in something in that field. What are things that you thought were a waste of time or didn't really help to grow? That's a really good question. I thought my personal finance class was a waste of time. When I was in middle school, a college student recommended it to me, and that's why I took it. I thought I would learn about personal finance, but really it was just like a filler class. As far as I can remember, the only things that I really learned were how to fill out a tax form and the different ways that there are to endorse a check. I feel like taking math was a waste of my time. I took math up until the next step was to take a university class, and I was definitely not about to do that. But looking back, maybe I should have stopped earlier and like taken stats instead of Calc BC. What did success mean to you during school and now after? Has anything changed or stayed the same? That's a really good like philosophical question. During school, it was kind of a numbers game. So my grades, my AP scores, and my ACT score, that was the measure of success, I guess. In terms of extracurriculars, I guess kind of the positions that I was able to attain in the clubs that I was in, or the awards that I was able to win in FBLA. But I think once I started to get more involved in things like blogging or photography, then obviously that didn't make grades any less important to me, but it kind of added another way in which I could measure my success, and that was kind of how much I was able to express myself through these new hobbies and how many people I was able to impact through the things that I was creating. And I think now numbers are still important to me. like how well my YouTube videos are doing or how many photography clients I can get. But my sense of success also hinges a lot on just how I'm feeling. So when I'm in the groove and I'm just like staying on top of everything, feeling productive, feeling happy, I feel successful. Maybe even if I don't have a lot of like outside accomplishments that I can show for that. But if I'm kind of in a rut like I am this week, then I just feel less successful, even if things are going well. How do you deal with difficult teachers, and what have you learned from your favorites? I don't think I've had teachers that were difficult as in hard to deal with or communicate with. I've definitely had teachers who I didn't think did a very good job at teaching, and in that case, I really just kind of had to suck it up and try to use my time in that class in a different way if I thought that the class was a waste of time, or try to work hard to teach material to myself if I thought the teacher just wasn't doing a good job of getting material across to us. I've had some teachers who have scared me a little bit, so in that case my strategy was to basically just try and be really polite with them and friendly and not give them any reason to yell at you. And then there's difficult as in they had high expectations of you, and in that case I just appreciated that and I tried to live up to those expectations because I knew that because of that I would actually be able to learn a lot in that class. How to balance it all without sacrificing sleep? That's a great question. And I'm not the best person to answer this question because I definitely had some unhealthy sleeping patterns at some points in my school career, but I also don't want to be like, it's unavoidable, you're gonna get terrible sleep in high school, because I think there's this weird thing where people are proud of not getting enough sleep and they'll be like, yeah, I only got 3 hours of sleep last night, like I'm so busy. And that's not okay. Like, getting a bad night of sleep is gonna happen to all of us at some point or another, but not taking care of yourself is not really something to be proud of. And yet again, my answer for this is just gonna be planning. If you can use your time efficiently and know what's most important for you to focus on, you'll have more time available to you to sleep. And it's just as simple as that. Was junior year fun, or did it just feel like going through the motions? The classes were hard, I had a full schedule, and that year was the hardest year in all of my clubs. That was also kind of the year that I started blogging and doing photography, so it was just like everything coming together all at once. So in all honesty, like I had some fun experiences, but I don't think I can call it fun overall. Obviously it's all about how you choose to experience it, but like compared to senior year where you have a lot of fun end of the year things, junior year didn't really have a lot of those. It was just kind of like the year that everyone knew they had to push the pedal to the metal and just get through it, get through all those AP exams, get through college applications, get through everything that was going on in their lives. Did it feel like going through the motions though? I wouldn't call it that either, because I feel like going through the motions implies that it was kind of mundane and boring, but it was very intense and like up and down stressors. So yeah, it was a wild and stressful ride. Did you ever worry about making friends? Not in high school, because all of my friends from middle school went to the same high school as me. And so even though my friend group changed a lot during high school, at the start of it, I didn't have any fears about like not finding friends because I had friends. I did switch schools in the middle of 3rd grade though, and I also went to a different middle school from all of my elementary school friends, so like I'd had those experiences under my belt, and that also helped me to not be nervous because I kind of just trusted the process at that point and knew that wherever I went, I would find people like me and find people to befriend. How to survive? I don't know. What was your study routine? I don't think I had like a uniform study routine that I always followed. Weekly planning again comes into this because instead of like taking it day by day, at the start of the week, I could kind of look ahead and see what was coming up and plan out study time. So like if I had to complete a certain number of chapters for reading, I could space that out on my schedule so that I wouldn't feel overwhelmed by it. How do you motivate yourself to get things done? There were a lot of questions very similar to this, and I think the best thing you can do is kind of eliminate the need for motivation. And what I mean from that is kind of learning how to do things whether or not you feel like doing them. Like, being motivated should not be a prerequisite for you doing something. Again, something that really helps with that is weekly planning, but also daily planning. When you know at the start of the day exactly what you're gonna spend that day doing, you no longer need to like use your willpower to force yourself to do things. There's something called decision fatigue, where if we make too many decisions during the day, we get worse at making decisions, and this kind of applies in the same way to willpower, where if you have to use your willpower to motivate yourself to get up and do something, too many times, by the end of the day, you're just gonna run out of the energy to practice self-discipline. And the way to like cure that is to create a routine in which you're making as few decisions as possible. So when you have a plan for the day and you're just following that plan, you don't have to be sitting there like, should I work on my math homework now? I really feel like I should, but I really don't want to. You don't have to go through that process because it's the next thing on your to-do list. Like maybe you don't feel like doing it, but sorry, your past self already decided that you were gonna do it. Obviously this is all easier said than done, but it gets easier the more you do it, so trust me. Okay, this video turned out really long, but I hope there are some tidbits of helpful information that you could get from this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week when I hopefully can bring myself to put together a proper video. Bye!